Welcome to the first Purple Cloud podcast back for a while. I'd like to introduce Greta Young and who's just written this fabulous book, Shanghan Lun Explained, um, also edited by Chris Zaslawski, who we have here today. Welcome, Chris and
Hi,
Greta.
Daniel. Thank you.
And Greta, we were talking just a little bit off air about how you got into the study of the Shanghan Lun,
Yeah,
and I was learning that it was you had a sort of detour via the Wen Bing. So you also have some
yeah,
very deep
yeah,
knowledge of
yeah,
Wen Bing. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about your
yeah.
history with Shanghan Lun.
Well, actually, my first interest into doing Chinese medicine is the result of my husband, because who actually suffered from like a migraine headaches. And then he decided, I think at some point, that he is taking too much, Western medication. And he said to me, he just wanted to actually try acupuncture. And so that's how I got interested in the whole thing. So, and then I went to, uh, 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 I took my husband to see a Chinese acupuncturist in Hong Kong. And, and then he described that he suffered from this kind of migraine headaches. And every time that he had this headache, how devastating it is. And so this guy said, okay, instead of treating him, all the necessary points for his headache, his first point is stomach 36, Zhu San Li. And then, of course, just the two points. So afterwards, when my husband went home and he decided, he said, I feel this kind of this feeling of very relaxed and warm feeling. And he said, you must tell Dr. Lee about this. So from then onwards, he decided to go into. So I thought, well, while this acupuncture is so good for his headache, why don't I learn acupuncture? And then I started studying acupuncture. And then afterwards, I decided by doing acupuncture, I really should go into the whole theory of Chinese medicine. That is when I started going to Beijing to learn Chinese medicine right from scratch. At that time, I was about 45 already, and I feel that the thing that urged me to do that, I thought, if the young student can actually learn this in a couple of hours, like say 2 hours or something, I can put in double the effort, and I hope that I will get there. And this is the thing that actually urged me. So in spite of my age, didn't deter me from going into Chinese medicine as a student. And so, from then onwards, I've just started to get deeper and deeper into Chinese medicine.
That's really amazing. And this is actually the second edition of your book. This book, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are some of the differences? Like I've noticed a few, but maybe you could let the future readers know about some of the differences between
Well,
the first and second editions.
the second edition is actually, we put in more things because at the time I had a bit of a dispute with my editor of the original version. So I think my solicitor said, if you want to do a second version, you need to add in more content. So this is what I've done, because I decided, because the Jue chapter is a very important chapter. Actually, in the past, it's been kind of bit of a mystery. And I find that Jue chapter is a very important channel. And also some of the disease described in Jue is very complex and very difficult to comprehend. So I decided to, revise the Jue and put in additional information. So on top of that, I put in additional, like say, appendix, from the original version. So this is why I think we need to have the two version 1 and version 2, whereas the original is just one book.
I got you. Like in some of the appendices, I really like the pulse appendix. You've got all the sort of pulses in one place.
Yes,
I don't know if that's it. That's really handy just to see that all there.
Yes.
There are a few things I really liked in that, but that was certainly one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of things did you add to the Jueyin chapter?
The Jue, well, like some of the additional kind of thing about, like, say, Wu Mei Wan, which is very, very actually very interesting kind of formula. Wu Mei Wan can be used to treat all kinds of diseases. And because it is actually one of the formula that actually comply of different flavor, the sour flavor, the acrid flavor, the sweet flavor, and the warm, and then the cold, the different. So it is a mixture. So when I was talking, to people about Wu Mei Wan, how to use it, and I think it's up to the practitioner's discretion to see if there is more heat, then you can add, a stronger, more incorporate a stronger dosage of the cold herbs. If there is more coldness, then of course you can incorporate some of the sujiao and, all these kind of warm herbs. And because I think of the complex thing with the Zheyin, which is complex heat and cold, because the Zheyin, apart from being the last channel, it actually eventually it has the recovery of Zheyin. That means it's the conversion from the cold pattern to heat pattern, such as Bai Tao Wong Tang. Well, Bai Tao Wong Tang is basically for diarrhea, but it's a heat diarrhea. And it is in the Zheyin chapter. The reason why is because I think if the extreme cold can herald the return of the heat. So if the Zheyin chapter, if you treat the Zheyin disorder properly, it can revert back to Shaoyang. And that's why there is some sort of heat pattern, like the conversion.
Makes sense. And yeah, just to change topics a little bit, I'm curious as to the role Chris played in editing.
I think you turned soft again, Daniel.
Is that okay? I'm on the mic now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the role Chris played in editing the book.
Oh, yes.
So my relationship with Greta goes back to
Long time.
I think 2002.
Yes. Oh, wow.
When Greta started bringing out well-known and esteemed Chinese medicine practitioners into Australia. And she used to run a conference or a seminar down in Melbourne. And then I'd organised to have one run at the university I was working at then, UTS. She's also published another text too. I don't know if you know this one.
Yes, which is a souvenir.
I don't know what's it called. Sorry,
it's called Pearls of Wisdom because that was Greta's name she gave to the seminar series.
Oh, that's right. Okay, great.
Yeah, she collated all the different visiting professors that she got into this, and I think it was a 10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary,
yeah. But so I was introduced to Greta. She just probably emailed me at the time and said, "Hello, I'd like to run a seminar. Are you interested in sponsoring?" And I said, of course, I always said yes. And I didn't know how detailed and how well studied Greta was, and also the people she brought out as well. And so that was my introduction via sponsoring the seminars. And so when Greta asked me to edit the second edition, I said, yeah, no problem. Because I did already have a copy of the first edition, and I have a good eye for detail. And I also looked at it as self-education as well by reading it, and not just once, but many times I learned a lot as well. So it was a great experience for me to be able to do that. Yeah. So that's my background, Daniel.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. And what sort of...
Well, Chris has been very helpful. I think even with the revision, it took us a year to finish it.
Yes, it did.
And what sort of contributions were you making, Chris? Just sort of...
Oh, look, they were more formatting and editing for clarity and for expression and things like that. By no means do I want to take kudos for any of the actual information in there. Yeah, so mine was more editorial process rather than anything.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I wasn't aware of this, that you were bringing these people to Australia. Were these some of your teachers in Beijing?
Yes, most of them are from Beijing. A couple of them is actually from different, some of them are from Beijing University of my past, mentor lecturers, like my Shanghan supervisor, Professor Fu Yanling. He was my Shanghan supervisor. The fact that he was the supervisor because he was actually a disciple of the famous renowned Professor Liu Duzhou, which is
Okay.
supposed to be a very renowned Shanghan specialist.
Yeah, wow. I was going to ask you a little bit about um yeah, if you studied with any of Liu Zhuzhou's students or Hu Shu's students as well.
Yes,
And you've studied with a little bit of both of these sort of these lineages.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to be able to actually did some clinical observation with Professor Liu Duzhou.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, which
When
is
w-
very good.
when
I think before he passed away. Yeah.
oh, very lucky.
Mm.
And what would you say you took from this system of Liu Duzhou's? What sort of understandings of the Shanghan Lun did you gain from this system, from this lineage?
Can you say that again?
Oh, I'm just wondering what sort of insights into the Shanghan Lun did you get from your studies with the Liu Duzhou lineage?
Oh, I think I was very inspired by him because I think he was with his diagnosis, it was very, very positive. Like say some patient come in, then of course he would actually explain that this patient has got this pattern. And then very quickly, he asked the patient a couple of questions. And next thing, because he's got two daughters, doing all that, and some of his students, then he'll just read out the formula and the daughter will write it out, the prescription, and gave it to the patient. So really, I think daily, for the one morning session, he can actually treating maybe something like 50 patients.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, did you is there any other insights from other of your teachers in Beijing you received?
Uh, well, I find that actually I follow quite a few other, specialists, and each one have a different kind of view. But I think Professor Liu Duzhou he is actually, even though he's a Shanghan specialist, he actually is not averse to using some other formula from Wen Bing, and he called it 五经接轨. That means to linking the ancient formula, such as Jingfang and Shanghan Lun, with Wen Bing formula. And he cited an example. He said this particular patient is got something, very, heat in the chest, which is a 自指使汤 pattern, you know. And then he said, in addition, he said this patient also has some sort of dampness. So then, of course, he combined the 自指使汤, which is a Shanghan formula, together with Sanren Tang, which is a 3-seed decoction, which is a Wen Bing formula. So he's got no issue with combining the two, and which I like about it. Whereas some other professor is say, if I'm a Jingfang practitioner, I only use the Shanghan Lun formula. What's wrong with using other formula if that is very helpful to your diagnosis and then the ultimate clinical outcome?
So he wasn't a purist. I think
I
he had
think
that.
I think I like the way Professor is very Liu Duzhou is very open-minded. He does not have any particular sort of issue with using the Sifang, which is the Sifang is many formulas afterwards, so he can combine the Jingfang with Sifang. But the main thing is actually is still the core formula could be just the Jingfang, the Shanghan Lun formula, combined with other formula.
Yeah, that's so that comes back to your I guess your origin starting with the Wen Bing
Yes.
studies, and maybe we could discuss a little bit more. There was a quote in the book which I really liked, which was like, you can't talk about, if you talk about Wen Bing without talking about Shanghan, it's like talking about a tree without its root. I think that was in the
Well,
book.
I think one thing is really because some of the professor did when they lectured, they said, "Oh, one thing is now redundant because it is the treatment of heat-related febrile disease, and whereas now like say in the old days, the one thing, yes, definitely, but then for all the one thing formula can be used clinically, in the modern setting for treatment of contemporary disease. So that's why Professor Zhang Wenxian, well, he has actually written a book about the Wen Bing, and he called the Wen Bing formula pattern. The fact that he talked about formula pattern, he said, because a patient come to you, then they can actually present it at that time certain patterns. And then the next time when you prescribe something, the pattern can change. But however, the formula pattern, like Yin Chao San, Sang Ju Yin, and all that, San Ren Tang, they actually have some sort of indication. This never change. So therefore, he called it the like Yin Chao San pattern, Sang Ju Yin pattern, etc., etc. So, which is very, very interesting. So my other Wen Bing book is we're talking about the more or less about formula pattern.
Mm. Oh, that's very interesting. You haven't published a Wen Bing book, have you?
No, I haven't.
No, it's
No,
in
I
in
think
the
it's still
works.
actually waiting to be published. I think I've given the manuscript to Chris.
Oh, that's really great, because I think there's a real lack of good information. I know there's a translation of Wu Tong coming out soon, I think, as well.
Mm,
But there's really not so much on the Wen Bing out there, and I think there's a real lack of good understanding. So I'm very happy to hear you'll
mm.
be adding to the literature on it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm curious how in clinic I mean, you've already mentioned how Liu Du Zhou, but some of your other teachers might balance this use of Shanghan and Wen Bing formulas. I think you might have already answered this talking about these the patterns, but
Yes.
how would you kind of balance them in clinic, just by sort of analyzing the use of observing the patterns? Is that the
Uh,
big?
well, I think the one being this pattern, but the Shanghan book actually originally is actually the theory of Shanghan is actually closely related to the Su Wen Bing, which is a febrile disease, and emphasizing the importance of Zheng Qi versus because I think it's always said, if you have the Zheng Qi is there, that means your immune system is good, then of course you won't contract the disease. And also how together with the invasion of an exterior pathogen. And if your Zheng Qi is strong and given the correct kind of treatment, then of course you recover. But then they talk about, if you give incorrect treatment, that means you make the wrong diagnosis, not following whatever is described in the Shanghan, you give the wrong one, then of course it can transmute. Then of course, then it can develop into different patterns. So therefore, the Liu Jing Bianzheng, which is the 6 channel, is basically a system incorporating apart from the 6 channel, which is the 3 yang channel and the 3 yin channel. Also, they talk about how is correlation with the Zhangfu organ and also the qi and blood, and of course the yin and yang. And ultimately, of course, you come up with some sort of correct diagnosis. What I like about the Shanghan thing is in each one of the clauses, because the Shanghan actually is the first book who's got the Li Fa Fang Yao together. Li, that means the pathogenesis. Fa is the method, how to deal with it. Fang is the formula. Ultimately is the herbs. So it's incorporate all of that. So there are many, many clauses in Shanghan Lun who's got all of those things. So for a start, they will tell you, why is this? And the differentiation that this is a Taiyang pattern, this is a Yangming pattern, this is a Shaoyang pattern. So each one of the pattern is got the outline. The first outline, Taiyang pattern, is an exterior pathogen. So therefore, there's Wuhan, aversion to cold, and then, like say, Ma Huang Tang, Gui Zhi Tang. Then the Yangming pattern is heat related. And then the Shaoyang, because it's actually Shaoyang is described as the one yang, which is the yi yang, is the one with the least yang qi. So therefore, the Taiyang is actually a Ju Yang, big Yang Qi, and then Yang Ming also, the Shaoyang with the least. That's why, like Xiao Cai Wu Tang, apart from harmonizing the exterior and interior, it incorporates Ren Shen Gan Cao Da Zhao. The reason why they use Ren Shen incorporate into the Xiao Cai Wu Tang is because to boost up the Zheng Qi. If the Zheng Qi is diminished, then it will go into the yin channel. So that is why it's very important. And then, of course, I think the Shanghan in each one, I want to later on cite some examples, like we talk about something, why are we using certain formula, such as why are we using Ma Huang Tang, why are we using Ma Xing Si Yi Gan Tang, why is somebody suffering from wheezing, supposing, then you can have Ma Xing Si Gan Tang, or you can have Gui Zhi Tang plus Hou Po Xing Zi Tang. They both actually suffer from wheezing, but the difference is one is already gone into the heat congesting in the lung, whereas the Gui Zhi plus Hou Po Xing Zi Tang also got wheezing, but at the same time, it has exterior pattern, and that is the difference. And then, of course, something like, say, supposing like Wu Ling San, Zhu Ling Tang, they both actually have urination problem. But what is the difference? The Zhu Ling Tang, of course, there's yin deficiency. Also, there is heat. The Wu Ling San is different. The Wu Ling San is a Taiyang pattern. It's not properly resolved. It might have the exterior pattern not properly resolved, but at the same time, it's affecting the urinary bladder. That's why there is the actually inhibited urination. In one of the Shanghan Lun clause about Wu Ling San, it says that if the patients actually recover, from this, give a little water to harmonize the stomach. That is clause 71. But if the patient had urination problem, then Wu Ling San governs. That means the differentiation between someone who's actually depleted because of the heat, depleted in the Jingye, so therefore you use some sort of water to harmonize the stomach. But if there is urination problem, then of course it is not actually due to the Jingyes being depleted. It is due to actually the qi transformation is actually not doing properly because of the urinary problem, and therefore the distribution of fluid is not being actually going to, so there is thirst, but the thirst is different to the depletion of fluid. There is urination problem. And I remember one of the professors said, oh, this patient, has got thirst, but does it have urination problem? If there is urination problem, we cannot actually just address the thirst. We have to use the Wu Ling San to help with the transformation of qi.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's
yes. So I think that is why Shanghan, when it was written so long ago, thousands of years ago, is still relevant in today's kind of clinical setting, is because some of the formula can be used in the treatment of some of the contemporary diseases.
I would say the Wu Ling San is something I use quite well. I
Quite
wouldn't say quite when I see the pattern and it does happen, and it's still very miraculous.
Yeah. The other thing is Wu Ling San. The other one, Ling Gui Zhu Gan Tang. Ling Gui Zhu Gan Tang, the difference between Wu Ling San and Ling Gui, one is in the lower jiao. Ling Gui Zhu Gan Tang is the water in the stomach, in the middle jiao. This is something that actually Wen Bing is, that's why I say Wen Bing is really to complement the things, what is not mentioned in Shanghan Lun. Shanghan does not emphasize too much on the triple gel, whereas the triple gel is the pathway for the transformation of qi and water and dampness. So when you actually treatment of dampness in Wen Bing is actually discussed in details, because for the dampness could be just dampness alone, or could be dampness plus heat. But then when dampness plus heat, which one is the strongest? So you have to actually do that. So they have different formula to address the dampness pattern in Wen Bing. If it is just a little bit of heat, but not more than damp cold or coldness, water retention, you can use the 3-seed decoction like San Tang. If it is actually more heat, then of course you can use Gan Lu Xiao Du Dan. And if it is less heat, more heat, but then there is less dampness, you can use Bai Hu Tang plus Changzhu. So therefore, it's actually clearly defined about the different degree of damp and heat.
I'm curious, when you're using these clinically, do you, because in the book you have a lot of case studies which are fantastic, as well as a lot of modifications and things like this, so we can see how to flexibly use these things in clinic, which is really fantastic. It's quite a unique feature about this book. I don't think there's another book out there with these kind of on the Shanghan Lun, including the original text, which also includes really ways to make it clinically accessible. I'm just curious, when you're in clinic, are you sticking to these formulas pretty closely, or are you modifying them as you see fit?
I think generally people don't use just the formula alone, because the pattern is not just confined to that particular one. Say, for instance, I cite an experience like, say, someone suffering from gastritis. It could be a Xie Xing Tang pattern, but at the same time, they have maybe some sort of acid reflux. Then you have to incorporate some other herbs into it to address the acid reflux, like Wu Zai Gu or something like that. Professor Fu Yanling, he has some study. He specialized in gastrointestinal disorder like gastritis. And he said, by looking at the tongue actually basically is a mirror of what they are doing in the gastroscopy, because when it shows the tongue is actually, there is lots of redness, and that means there is some sort of a lot of heat. So therefore the gastroscopy will show that it is more red. And, and then if there is less red, and then the tongue again will reflect that. So Professor Fu Yanling treatment of his stomach disorder, or all this gastro, basically based on his tongue diagnosis. Whereas Shanghan Lun, actually the tongue diagnosis is not in great details. The Wen Bing one is very, very much in details. So therefore, I can't say that Wen Bing, because some people talking about, Wen Bing because it's the treatment of all this, he is redundant, is for emergency. It is not, because what is lacking in Shanghan is actually complemented by Wen Bing. I think this Wu Jitong, one of the Wen Bing specialists, he did say that. He said, when Shanghan is talking about the 6th channel, and then Wen Bing is talking about the triple gel. So the Shanghan is talking about harmonizing interior and exterior using Xiao Cai Wu Tang. We are actually, by trying to separate the thing from the upper gel to the lower gel, 分消走线. That means using something like accurate opening and bitter discharging, such as like a 半夏泻心汤. Is 半夏泻心汤 is actually Professor Fu Yanning like to use that a lot.
Clinically, would he
think,
see it as sort of opening a blockage between
yes,
the upper
that's it.
jowl and the
Or
lower?
glomus, yeah.
Yeah, the glomus. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So would he think kind of a lot in terms of the up-down dynamic in the body?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I
Mm.
mean, of course, that's like you say, that's also maybe it's there in the Shanghan Lun, but it's not maybe explained very in a lot of details.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating. And in your Wen Bing book, what sort of forthcoming Wen Bing book, what sort of approach are you going to take? Will it be similar?
It's more clinical oriented. It's not about the theory. I think there are quite a few books already talking about all the different theory of Wen Bing. So it's basically I think I actually more or less using the Wen Bing formula pattern. So using this, starting from Ying Qiao San, Sang Ju Ying, which is something like Feng Wan initially. But then later on, you talk about the Si Wan and different patterns. So there's altogether there's 24 chapters.
Oh, wow.
Because one thing apart from talking, because of Shanghan, we talk about the 6 channels and all the different, degrees of, but the one thing we talk about based on the pathogen, like Feng Wan, that means the wind warm. And then Chun Wan, which is Chun Wan is a kind of latent pathogen. And then you talk about Su Wan, which is summer heat. And then you talk about the dam warm. Then you talk about the Qiu Zhao, which is the autumn dryness. Then you talk about the other things such as epidemic kind of like similar to COVID these days. That's why Wen Bing is so relevant.
So would you see
like an epidemic kind of warm?
So would you see? I'm just curious. Would you see the COVID? Would it?
Yes, very
fit
relevant.
more for you? More for you for the Shanghan, the Wen Bing, or a little bit of both, depending on the patient.
Bit of both. A little bit of both, because I think to the Chinese, I think if you go through all the history of China, actually there's always in the Ming Dynasty there was a big outbreak of epidemic, and that is why Wu Ke he emerged, because he said that all these people, they all not you don't have to do pattern differentiation. They all have the similar problem, and all the thing is from the inhaling of these pathogens through the nose and mouth. And he used something like a special formula dedicated to treatment of this. So this is the beginning of, like a Wen Yi, which is epidemic, and it is similar. One of the formula actually by the Qing Dynasty called he used Xingjiang San. I don't know whether Chris you ever used that particular formula. Xingjiang San is made up of 4 herbs, and the 4 herbs is actually is called Chan Tui, which is the cicadas, and then they have also the Chan Tui, and then Jiang Chan and Da Huang, and then Pian Jiang Huang. And basically, I think Chan Tui is equivalent to the steroid. And then the Jiang Huang is equivalent to the antibiotics. Da Huang is anti-inflammatory. And then Jiang Chan is basically equivalent to anti-vaccine. So basically, this particular formula, even way back in the Qing Dynasty, this particular guy called Yang Lishan, he came up with this formula. Again, is addressing the warm epidemic.
So you said the Jiangchan acts as a vaccine, or is anti? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Jiangchan
I've never heard
anti-vaccine. But nobody ever actually did say that. But I read it from a book. It says that that Chan Tui is equivalent to the steroid.
Okay.
And then, of course, the Jiang Huan, that means Pian Jiang Huan, is equivalent to antibiotic, whereas the Da Huang is anti-inflammatory. And then the Jiang Chan is anti-vaccine. Because I think there are many of the things I actually have an insight about the Western medicine. I'm not running down Western medicine, but I'm actually more or less saying Chinese medicine. There's always the good thing about Chinese medicine is actually they always have something to anti, the adverse effect, side effect of one particular, whereas the Western medicine is very much to the point, but they disregard some of the adverse side effect.
Did you practice did any of your other teachers have this sort of how do I 中医西医结合 the Western medicine and worked with this Western medicine as well as working with Chinese medicine in a fusion style medicine?
I think in China, this is the trend now, integrated Western and Chinese medicine. So if a patient come in to see a heart specialist, or I have some sort of like say angina, I have some chest pain, things like that. First of all, you go and actually do all the, ECG and everything. And then finally, they come back and do the result and say, oh, yes, you have ST depression or whatever. Then they will actually take the pulse and then give you the formula. So in China, most of the hospitals now are actually integrated. Very rarely that the doctor of the Lao Zhongyi is actually being redundant. So all the Chinese doctors have got a very clear understanding of Western medicine as well.
And for anyone looking to learn more with you, you also have your website and you have a lot of sort of study programs online. Did you want to tell people a little bit about that?
Yes. I do have a website, and then the website is www and then Pearls, Pearls, Chinese medicine. That means one word, Pearls Chinese medicine.
I'll put a link in the notes for you for the website. Yeah.
And then the website actually has got a lot of the past kind of seminar that I conducted, and now the webinar. The last one I did was actually, when did I do the last one? September. It's about Wen Bing.
Oh, great.
Actually, basically, it's basically to reflect all my years studying with Professor Kong Guangyi, as a Wen Bing student, and Kong Guangyi's kind of approach to treatment using some of the Wen Bing strategy.
Oh, that's great. So anyone wanting to further their studies and go in depth about what you're writing about, they can we'll have a look on your website.
Yes.
All right. Well, we might wrap it up there unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah. What I'd like to actually add a few things.
Okay, sure.
About one of the things is like treatment of diarrhea.
Okay, sure.
Treatment of diarrhea, it is actually frequently encountered symptoms. And so there are many formula that address that. 葛根芩连汤 is one of them. And then 理中汤 is one of them too. And then 生姜泻心汤. And then, of course, later on, like 白头翁汤 is also for that. So I just want to say, 葛根芩连汤 basically is addressing diarrhea that is heat related. At the same time, it has actually an exterior pattern not being addressed. And then apart from the exterior pattern, it also suffer from diarrhea. That means apart from aversion to cold, at the same time, the patient suffer from diarrhea. So you can use 葛根芩连汤 because Gegan by itself, it can actually address the exterior. At the same time, it can more or less stop the diarrhea or modify the diarrhea. Huang Qing, Huang Lian also, I think, is addressing. And the other one, Li Zhongtang. Now, Li Zhongtang is just the opposite, because Li Zhongtang is a tying chapter for someone suffering from diarrhea. But this diarrhea is a cold type of diarrhea, not heat, because it's due to spleen deficiency. So therefore, that means the bowel movement is very loose. So you need to tonify the middle, which is the spleen, because the spleen yang is deficiency. One of the key herbs is ganjiang. And then, of course, the other one is Shengjiang Xie Xing Tang, is one of the glomus. You see, you have Banxia Xie Xing Tang, Shengjiang Xie Xing Tang, Ganchao Xie Xing Tang. The Shengjiang Xie Xing Tang in particular is addressing someone suffering from, like say, intestinal rumbling, diarrhea. So therefore, instead of using, because the Banxia Xie Xing Tang, there's Ganjiang, but Shengjiang Xie Xing Tang, that means they reduce the dosage of Ganjiang, which is warm, but add 4 liang, that means about 12 grams of Shengjiang, to address all the diarrhea. So there are many, many such things. And at the same time, like some of the, I did mention earlier on, like say, someone suffering from wheezing, like wheezing. So if it is a Taiyang pattern, you can use 桂枝汤 plus 厚朴杏子. Or if it is interior, because the lung heat is actually stopping the lung from depurating, downbearing, and diffusing, you can use 麻杏石甘汤. So that is, I think the important part is for the practitioner to read this book, is to read all the different clauses and to understand, even though not just remember, say, oh, Shengjiang Xie Xing Tang or diarrhea, you can use Gegan Qing Lian Tang. You have to understand, because all the clauses will tell you the differentiation of the pattern is very clearly stated. In fact, wrapped up, because in the Shanghan Lun, one of the clause 16a, it says that you observe your symptoms, your pulse and symptoms and signs, you know what error you have committed and you treat accordingly. So if you actually using the wrong kind of diagnosis, again, you go back to the drawing board, you feel the pulse, you look at all the symptoms and signs, and you find out exactly where you went wrong, and then you treat accordingly.
That's quite interesting, and it's also what I was taught as well, as if you're clear on your diagnosis, even if you get it wrong,
you get it wrong. Sometimes you cannot get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So just as a last thing, Liu Duzhou did say that. He said, if a patient come to you and you're not sure what pattern exactly, you harmonize first, and then you treat later on, which is a very interesting hint.
And I was just wondering if you had any observations or clinical experiences for this kind of thing where you've maybe made a wrong attempt at the first. Because I think everyone likes to talk about when they're successful.
The success,
People don't really like to talk about their mistakes so often.
I had failure as well. I think when I was as a student doing Chinese medicine, and then my husband and I, we were actually in Hangzhou. And then at that time, I was actually doing the Wen Bing Qiu Zhao, which is, like one of the formula. So I used, and he had some sort of exterior pattern. I could have used something like Wei Tang or something like that. But instead, I used this, I use Si Gao, which is wrong, because I think Si Gao is very cold. And then what happened is Si Gao, then of course he suffered from this kind of cough for over 1 month, which could have been resolved, after maybe a week of medication. But instead he carry on due to the wrong treatment.
And did you give him anything after this? Did you give him a Guizhi tongue or something like this, or not?
No, I didn't. I
No,
didn't get
okay.
the chance to do
Oh,
that. But
okay,
then
okay.
eventually he recovered. But this whole thing was dragged on for a whole month.
Yeah,
It could
yeah.
have been resolved within the week.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's good to hear. I think it's good to hear stories like that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from people because we all learn from our past mistakes.
Yes.
Um, okay. Well, if that's is there anything else you'd like to add, Greta? I think we can.
Uh, Nothing much. No.
No, think we can wrap it up there. We've been going almost an hour now. Well, I'd just like to thank you both for joining today. Chris, is there anything you'd like to add at the
No, I'll
end?
leave the floor to Greta.
No,
I think
I'd
Okay.
like to thank Chris for all his effort. He's very, very patient, actually. He's
Uh,
very, very good.
well,
it was fantastic. Even the seminars, I mean, yes, editing the book was a very insightful process for me, but attending all the seminars that Greta's conducted over the years, I think you
Yeah.
commenced in 2002, Greta. And
Yeah.
I'm just looking here. I think you had at least one person every year. Some years you had two people.
Sometimes two.
Yeah.
Sometimes two. I've
And
been
they were
doing it for over
fantastic to be
20
able to
years,
get,
more
yeah,
than
they're
20 years.
fantastic to get these high
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
positions
Yeah,
out here to
because I
Australia.
think the reason why I want to write this book, Shanghan, because when I was a lecturer at RMIT, and I feel really my mission is to actually impart some of the essence, the good part of Chinese medicine to the non-Chinese speaking students. Because, if you can't read Chinese, there is a very little limited kind of book that you can consult. Whereas if you can read and write Chinese, that's fantastic. So my role is to actually just go between and translate some of the things as much as I could, to the non-Chinese speaking TCM student and practitioners.
And we've actually got Greta's authored a manuscript that's going to go in the Shanghai Journal for Chinese Medicine and Culture.
oh,
Yeah.
amazing.
Exploring her background to how she sees Chinese medicine and transmitting it to the West as well, more
Yeah,
specifically Australia.
I think it's such an important thing. Yeah, I wasn't aware of about that in your history, but it's terrifically important to bring people out as well as yeah, let people know that this whole world exists because most people don't have access to it. And
Yes, yes,
yeah,
that's it.
helping people, translate and just have access to this, maybe inspire people more, learn more, maybe even start to learn Chinese a little bit, that kind of thing.
And Greta's still been undertaking some online stuff. I mean, most of it is online now. Greta, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, online,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
And that's probably courtesy of COVID because she
Yes,
didn't have
yes,
people coming out up
yes.
till
Ever
then.
since COVID, I started actually doing online. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's a great opportunity for people to listen to these physicians from China.
Yeah,
Yep.
and all over the world, people can
Yep.
access them, not just Australia.
No,
So
correct.
I'll put the links in the show notes to your website, and the book can be purchased on our website on purplecloudinstitute.com as well as Amazon, I think. And yeah,
yeah.
I highly recommend it.
And Purple Cloud, right?
Yes,
Purple.
and on Purple Cloud Institute
Yeah,
website
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
And yeah, thank you both for joining today. It was a fantastic
Oh, thank
discussion.
you very much, Daniel, to have the chance to share with you some of the work that I do.
Oh no, very happy to learn more about it, and I look forward to delving in deep more in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks
Daniel.
guys.
yeah.
Thanks. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.